verses, so I'm just making sure they fit.
Wait, are you reading? Oh, no, I mean, it's... Hello? Figure out a new tune for a couple of weeks.
All right, now we'll see if I can remember it when it comes actually time to do it.
That's the worst part about when you do something and you get it, only the regular, so will come back.
Yeah, I don't know what, yeah, it's different things come out of my mouth. Like, I remember my daughter at her bat mitzvah, so we sang at our Shabbat dinner table, one tune of L'Chadodi. It was part of our Shabbat ritual. My ex-husband loved it, and we just sang the entire thing. But that was not the tune that they sang here in synagogue. So, you know, he had said to my daughter, well, of course you're going to do the tune we use because he loves it. And she said, of course I will. And she's up here leading services, and she started the congregational tune. And the look on her face was, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But nothing you could do. That's what she started. So, you know, we went along with it. But it is an interesting thing how the brain works. Brain connected to mouth.
The other week when I was like reading the doctor, it was like, oh, it took me several minutes, moments to figure out what the tune we always use for this.
Yeah, it does get very interesting.
I know that's better than the other one. Why can't I think of it?
So how's everything? Kids, school's good? Kids are good?
The quarter just ended today.
For you or for them or both?
For them.
For them.
So, I think they're all doing okay with school. We don't get much feedback for Maggie. We can see up-to-date grades once they get to middle school. But
Right.
for elementary school, we don't have access to that.
Oh, that's interesting.
So,
And Maggie's at where?
Raleigh Elementary.
Okay. Is that a magnet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My last, 3 more quarters of driving school out of town.
Yeah, it's those school years, I mean, they take forever, but they also, when you're past it, it seems like it went by in a flash, but it's
Yeah.
done.
I mean, this is our 6th year at that school, and it's been a wonderful school, and it's almost over. It's wonderful.
Right, right.
And all the other kids there look so little, and all the parents look so unfamiliar.
School populations change very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
without question. You know, my daughter just sent me pictures of her kids playing in the leaves, and her oldest, he's going to be 5 in February. He's like a grown-up. Like, the baby's gone. The cute little toddler's gone. You know, and it just, yet again, you sort of say, oh my goodness, what happened to those years? Still cute and cuddly, but very different. Very grown up. Meanwhile, their preschool is closed today in New Jersey because of all this stuff going on, which is interesting. I didn't check in with other friends of mine to know if they also closed. Like, it's unclear to me, would we close if there was a threat? Would we just beef up security? Like, what would we do? I mean, the preschool has sort of before and after care, but it's not really set up like a daycare like ours is. So I think they close much more easily because I think a majority of the parents, either there's someone who doesn't work or they have nannies. And my daughter's just not in that situation. She and her husband, sometimes they work at home, sometimes they commute into New York. So it's a real hardship when the kids are not in school. And she's trying to work out aftercare for next year when he's in kindergarten. And it's not easy. The school system has limited spots, and it's no guarantee you'll get a spot. And it's, I guess they're dependent on nannies, or I don't know what. It's interesting. Right.
Nannies come to their house.
Absolutely. So it's very intriguing. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, how are you?
So did that cat ever get adopted?
Nope, we still have both fosters.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I had to remove the one from my back over there because I was just going to sit on me. She fell asleep on my lap during dinner. They're very sweet. Someone needs to adopt them before they get too attached to us and can't make the
Your
transition.
cat?
daughter's cat now, who's at the end of life, and it's all kinds of headaches, providing for him, but he doesn't like other animals. So I haven't brought another animal into the house, and I wonder about when he's gone, will I start up with another animal? It's very limiting. Partly because he's sick. Just every time I go away, it's a real problem finding care for him.
If you've got two cats that can entertain each other, they can be left alone for a couple of days if they've got food.
Right.
But you can't really be left for one, and you can't be gone for more than a couple nights.
Exactly. Look, I'll leave him for a weekend without someone coming in, depending on timing, but anything more than 2 nights, Kim Wixel actually usually comes over, but I don't feel great about it. It's not perfect. But whatever. I have a kosher vegetarian home, so the thought of having someone come and stay in my house just makes me a nutcase. So that's my own mishigas, as they say. Well, I brought a sweater to be a little bit more modest, but it's so warm up here that I can't. Yeah. It was actually, I went out midday, and it was cooler than I thought it was going to be. But now it's just warm out, like balmy warm.
I think I saw that we're supposed to have record warmth this weekend.
Really? Okay. Where? Oh, very nice. Oh, okay. Yeah. Old haunting grounds, yeah. Nice, very nice. Well, it's 8:00, so I'll wait for the Schwenk kids, I think, to come in, and then we'll get started. If anyone's joining us on the live stream, just give us a few minutes. We're a little slow to start this evening. Yeah, I need people to sing loud. I was telling Anna, I've got a new Lecha Dodi that I'd like to do if I can. Like, I've been practicing it, but when it comes to it, will the tune actually come out of my mouth, or will I just revert to something I know well? Right. Right. So we'll get started. We'll see if more people come. If not, we don't have a minyan in the room. And we'll get started. We're going to begin Kabbalat Shabbat on page 11, as we recite the Psalms traditionally said to welcome in the Sabbath. Lechu neranena ladonai nari aletzor yishenu nikadma fanav bitoda bizmirot nari alo nikadma fanav bitoda bizmirot nari alo ki el gadol Adonai umelech gadol al kol Elohim asher biyado mekarei aretz v'toafot harim lo asher biyado mekarei aretz v'toafot harim lo. Arba'im shana akut b'dor va'omar am to'e levavhem v'hem le'edu derachai asher nishbati ve'api im yivo'un el menuchati. Before we move on, I've spoken before, this psalm, Psalm number 95, has always troubled me a little bit that it was selected to begin Kabbalat Shabbat because of its ending. The words that I just chanted, 40 years I was troubled by that generation in the desert, God is saying. These are a people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my, God's ways. And so in anger, I swore they would not enter my rest. To me, it's a very odd way to begin Kabbalat Shabbat, but given all that's going on, not only in our nation and the world, these words sort of weigh on me, that I feel that and maybe I'm speaking for my generation, maybe not, but I feel that I was lulled post-World War II into this sense of the world is good. Now, I did grow up during the Vietnam War years. It wasn't like life was perfect, but I'm embarrassed to say how shocked I am at the state of things today, really worldwide. And these words sort of ring true, that for 40 years we were in the desert, and still God is troubled by their lack of faith. And here we are thousands of years after this story, and I think humanity perhaps has not yet proved its worth. To start off Kabbalat Shabbat on a very down note. So let's go on to Psalm number 96 and sing a new song to God. Hopefully, if we keep doing this, that eventually enough people will join us that we will indeed allow the world to be a better place. Page 13. Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Hu Shemo, Basru Miyom Liyom Yeshuato, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Hu Shemo, Basru Miyom Liyom Yeshuato. And with it all, even with climate change, we still need to be grateful for all that there is. Yismechu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz, yihiram hayam umlo'o, yalo sadai v'chol asher bo, azranenu kol atzeyar, lihifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, v'yamim b'emunato. We continue silently on page 15, Psalm 97. And Ohavei Adonai sin ura. Those who love God hate evil. We pick up 4 lines from the bottom on page 16. Or zaru alat tzadik, Ol Yishrei Lev Simcha, Or Zaru Alat Tzadik, Ol Yishrei Lev Simcha, Or Zaru Alat Tzadik, Ol Yishrei Lev Simcha, Ol Yishrei Lev Simcha, Or Zaru Alat Tzadik, Ol Yishrei Lev Simcha, Ol Yishrei Lev Simcha. We continue again silently with Psalm 98 on page 17. Mizmor Shir L'Adonai Shir Chadash. And we pick up on page 18 at the top of the page that we should muster ourselves together and call out to God, all the earth, in joyful singing. Hariu Ladonai kol haaretz, Hariu Ladonai kol haaretz, Pitzchu v'ranenu v'zameru, Pitzchu v'ranenu v'zameru. Hariu Ladonai kol haaretz, Hariu Ladonai kol haaretz, Pitzchu v'ranenu v'zameru, Pitzchu v'ranenu v'zameru. Lihifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, v'yamim b'meisharim. We pick up with Psalm number 99 on page 19. Again, we begin silently. And we continue on page 20 at the arrow. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. And that brings us to page 21, Psalm number 29, where we rise traditionally for Mizmor LeDavid. Mizmor LeDavid, Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, Havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, Havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, Hishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim, Adonai al mayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, Vayarkidem kemo egel levanon v'siryon kemo ven re'emim. Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol el ayalot, Vayechesof ye'arod, uv'hechalo kulo omer kavod, kulo omer kavod. Adonai lama bu yashav, vayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. You may be seated. And I have a new tune for Lecha Dodi that I'd like to try out, but now I have to see if I can recall it now that I've done the other tunes. Let me see if I can remember this one. Give me just a second. It's possible that I'll remember. It's possible that I won't. Nope, it's totally gone. I should have shared it with you before services when I had it in my brain. Let's give it one more try. Nope, gone. We'll go back to a tune I know well. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Hishmiyanu el hamiyuchad, Adonai echad ushmo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'litchila, lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela, likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor ha'bracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila, Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabla, mikdash melech ir melucha, kumitze'i mitoch hafecha, rav lach shevet b'yemek havacha, v'hu yachamol alayech chemla, lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabla, hitna ari me'afar kumi, livshi bigdei tifartechami, al yad ben yishai beit halachmi, korva el nafshi ge'ala, lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabla, hitoreri, kiva orech kumi ori, uri, shir daberi, kavod Adonai alayech nikla, lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabla, lo tevoshi velo tikami, matish tochachi umatehemi, bach yechesu aniye ami, v'nivneta ir al tila, lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabla, v'hayu limshisa shosayich, v'rachaku kol mevalayich, yasis alayich Elohayich, kimsos chatan al kala, lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabla, yamin usmol tifrotzi, v'yet Adonai ta'aritzi, al yadish ben partzi, v'nismecha v'nagila, lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabla, Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha uv'tzahala, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabla, lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabla. You may be seated. We turn now to page 27 for Psalm 92, literally the song for Shabbat. Mizmor shir le'yom HaShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai. Mizmor shir le'yom HaShabbat, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lehagid baboker chastecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asur va'alei navel, alei higayon bechinor. Mizmor shir le'yom HaShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai. Mizmor shir le'yom HaShabbat, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. We continue on page 28 at the arrow. The righteous should flourish like the date palm and thrive like the cedar in Lebanon. Tzadik hatamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yizkeh shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim verananim yiyu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri velo avla tabo. And we conclude Kabbalat Shabbat with the final psalm, Psalm number 93 on page 29. The rivers rise up, Adonai, the rivers raise up their roar and raise up their waves above the roar of the vast sea and the majestic breakers of the ocean. Adonai stands supreme in the heavens. Mikoholot mayim rabim adirim mishpareyam adir bamarom Adonai edotecha nenu me'od levet chanav hakodesh Adonai leorech yamim. And do we have any mourners in the congregation this evening? Okay, so we're going to have mourners Kaddish. I'm assuming there are a few folks on live stream. We're very close to a minyan, so those in mourning and those observing your site this week, please rise, page 30. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, bi'alma divra kirete v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei dekudsha brichu. Le'ilah min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. So we'll pause for a very, very brief study. The Parsha, it's a great Parsha, really. Lech Lecha. Debbie Friedman made a beautiful, beautiful song about it. It begins with God instructing Abraham to go. Lech Lecha, take yourself up and go. The grammar actually of those words is a little confusing, and rabbis expound on it. But basically, Abraham is told to go to a land which God will show him. And it's a beautiful, beautiful concept that Abraham has faith, that Abraham's willing to go to the unknown. But as with every Torah portion, that's not the only thing in the portion, and there are a few things in the portion that are troubling. One is, I think it's the first time, it happens again later in a few chapters, that there's a famine in the land, and they go down to Egypt, and Abraham says to his wife, Sarah, who's, I can't remember now if her name is changed already. Their names get changed in this portion. Avram becomes Avraham, Sarai becomes Sarah. But he says to his wife, look, you're really beautiful, and they're going to kill me to get to you. So let's just pretend that you're my sister, and that way they won't kill me. So that's what they do. And Pharaoh takes Sarah into his court and gives Abraham all kinds of wealth, like cattle and all kinds of stock and material goods, and then God sends a plague upon Pharaoh's house, because Pharaoh's now got this married woman in his harem, or whatever his court is called. The rabbis argue that, in fact, Sarah was never actually taken as a wife, or that it was only a few days. It's all very unclear. Other commentators say she was there for several years. But from the text, it does seem like Pharaoh realizes that these plagues are here, and of course we're going to see like foreshadowing. Poor Egypt gets plague upon plague upon plague in our story, and Pharaoh realizes that something's fishy, and that, oh, by the way, Sarah is not his sister, it's his wife, and Abraham had caused Pharaoh to do wrongdoing. So it's troublesome in a modern mind to me that why is Pharaoh punished for this? Pharaoh's an innocent in this. And yet that is what we see, and it will happen again. But Abraham has this, they leave, they're given fair passage to leave once the famine is lifted, and he has all this wealth. And he's got his nephew with him as well. They don't have any children, but he's got his nephew Lot with him. And Lot's people and Avram's people are not getting along, and Avram comes out with what is seen to be a very fair settlement. When people don't get along, what do? Do you force the issue, or do you peacefully separate? So it's a question for me today when I look at our country and other places around the world where the parties that I do not support ideologically tend to hold power, but it's not like they've got a huge majority of the vote. It's not like it's very clear that I'm in a minority, that our country and many countries around the world are split. But we have no mechanism to say, you know what, we don't get along, let's just split. Let's have a divorce. Let's just divide our good things and split and be in two places. We have no way to do that. It's almost as if when I read this story that Abraham or that God or the Torah is setting up for us, look, this is going to happen. Just amicably go your separate ways if you don't get along. And yet we don't have that luxury. So Lot does go across the river, and Abraham is called Ivri, the one who's on the other side. I don't know why Lot's not called Ivri, but Abraham's called Ivri, and that's where the word Ivrit comes from, the word for Hebrew, and we were called the Hebrews in English, in Hebrew Ivrim, and the language is called Ivrit. That's where the word comes from. And but the portion has one other good thing in it, and that is that Abraham and Sarah are quite, well, actually another bad thing. Ishmael is born, they have no children. You know the story, Sarah gives Abraham her handmaid. That in and of itself is a difficult storyline for us. It happens throughout the Bible. It was a different era. We can't judge those times. But the thought of giving your woman possession, right? This was Sarah's possession that she gave to Abraham, is not pleasant to think about. And then, of course, Hagar is initially cast out, or she leaves and she comes back and will be cast out again. But, the issue of circumcision is in this portion, which I actually don't have any problem with. I know that it's a modern trope amongst the young folks that this is why are we maiming and disfiguring these baby boys without their say-so. This is a big issue amongst the 20s and 30-somethings. For whatever reason, it just doesn't bother me at all. But that's in this portion. And Isaac is not yet born, but the birth is promised. Abraham is told that his offspring will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. And I think I've shared with this group before that I was so pleased many years ago when my son called from Israel to say that they had been camping in the desert in the Negev, and he now understands the verse that I will make you as numerous as the stars in the sky. Because even here in Raleigh, we have enough light pollution that, okay, you look up, there are a few stars, what's the big deal? And it's not until you really get into someplace without any ambient light, the mountains, camping, the desert, wherever it might be, and look up on a clear night and that promise, which of course then that's all they had were those kinds of nights, and they had clear nights because half the year, of course, there was never any rain. It had to be really quite an astounding promise. And we're still here today. It's not been an easy journey, that's for sure. But we are here. I wouldn't say we're as numerous as the stars in the heavens, but we are here, which is something to be said. So it's been difficult times. Our elections, the news from New Jersey. It can happen anywhere. My daughter's kids' preschool was closed today out of an act of caution. It's not pleasant to think about. This is just on the heels of the anniversary of the Tree of Life shooting. And it's not just Jews. I mean, I appreciate and I'm concerned about anti-Semitism, but the truth is it's about hate. It's about hate of the other. And I think we as Jews and all minority groups have to raise that banner high, that when we feel attacked, we have to recognize that it's not just us. Perhaps that would go a little bit in the direction of helping to heal some of the issues between the African American community and the Jewish community. I think it's only problems on the fringe and amongst the ignorant, but it's still there. And it's, this whole issue of social media and that these people that are saying these things have literally millions of followers who are also ignorant of truths is very overwhelming and frightening. In terms of the Israeli elections, if you've been following, it's not always so easy for us Americans to follow. My nephew, some of you have read his writings before, Seffi Kogan wrote, I think, a brilliant piece explaining the electoral process in Israel and the current situation. If you're interested, you can probably Google his name, Seffi Kogan, SEFFI-KOGEN, or you can contact me after Shabbat, and I'll be glad to share the link. If any of you are on Facebook, I shared it on Facebook already. I had to read it a couple times to fully understand it. I got to say, it's not easy, but it's really good and helpful, I think, for us. And then we have to hope that the elections in our country result in somehow a turn back to sanity. I mean, that's the only thing I can say. I don't think it'll happen very quickly. I will share that I was disturbed with one thing that, I mean, obviously the ads, the campaigns, everybody lies, both sides. It's not just them, whoever them might be. I remember when I was in 4th grade, and I haven't stopped to think of what year it was, but I guess it must have been an election year. And we had like class elections. So I'm assuming the teacher did it like as a lesson plan to learn about the electoral process. And I was the campaign manager for my friend Dickie Lang. And I don't remember a lot, except I remember that we had rules that we had to follow. That you could only say nice things. You could talk about what you believed in. You couldn't criticize what the other person did. Like, we had all these rules. And I remember thinking, well, this is just 4th grade. I mean, the grown-ups know how to do this. They don't have to learn how to do this. Well, our elections have never been as nice as my fourth grade class elections were. And it was not actually preparing us to be adults because the adult world doesn't seem to follow those rules. But in pointing fingers, there's a lot more damage done. And I heard a clip, and I'll also share with you that I know a lot of people are saying, educate yourselves. Well, it's not easy. Where do you educate yourselves? Who do you trust? What do you read? Anytime you find something that you think is a reliable source, you'll find someone that you trust that says, no, that's not a reliable source. But I did see a few clips, and one was former President Obama, who I admire very much, and he was pleading with the world to stop demonizing those with whom they disagree. But he was doing it, it seemed, it was just a clip, but it seemed as if he was pointing a finger at the other side and saying this. And I gotta tell you, it's both sides. I hear some of my friends who are in the political camp that I find comfortable demonizing the other side, just as the other side demonizes my peers. So I think that it's something to be mindful of. I don't think we win any points by embarrassing people or making them feel bad. I don't know that you can educate or convince someone to vote differently at this point, but I don't think name-calling or demonizing on either side is at all helpful. And you know, I look to the Torah and I think of how we demonize Pharaoh in the Passover story. And so you see Pharaoh here, and well, he's clearly the bad guy. And I'm thinking, you know, that's not necessarily the right way to think of it. Lessons to be learned in this, fine. God's power, God's supremacy, fine. That God's pulling all the strings, fine. But I caution all of us to look at Lech Lecha and Abraham's willing to go out by himself to a new land, hopefully with new eyes, and that we should all take that directive to take a deep breath and be willing to stand up for what we believe in without demonizing the other. So that's very long-winded, my little political campaign about Lech Lecha. And of course, we'll be reading from the scroll tomorrow, and I'm sure the rabbis will have an interesting discussion. Rabbi Salman had a very interesting post this morning about it, and I'll share you more tomorrow morning. Okay, let's continue our service with Baruch Hu and the Ma'ariv service on page 39a, and we rise. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMavorach. Baruch Adonai HaMavorach Leolam Va'ed. You may be seated. God brings the notion of time and space, the notion of time being holy, the notion of time having worth. This is something that was novel in its beginnings, and the fact that Shabbat creates holy time was a new concept, again, when it began, and one that we revere today. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo el chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, baruch ata Adonai, hama'ariv aravim, page 40. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael, amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadita. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochveinu v'kumeinu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu, v'yorech yameinu, uvahem nege yomam v'layla, yomam v'layla. V'avatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim, baruch ata Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael, page 41. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. And we continue silently to the bottom of page 42. And the tzitzit should serve as a reminder that when you see them, and unfortunately most of us only see them on Shabbat mornings, but think of the tzitzit and let it be a reminder to keep to the commandments, not to go astray, to remember what is good and just. Adonai Elohechem emet. We continue on page 43a, and we go over to 44 silently. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לך ענו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נהורה תהילות עושה יפה למלכותך ראו בניך בוקעם לפני משה זה אלי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב ולא מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני ועל ישראל. Page 45. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Please allow us to go to sleep peacefully and awaken us to life. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום אתה ויד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. We rise. Page 46. V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה ויעמד דברי קראתי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמה ויאמרו Amen. The evening Amidah is recited silently. It begins on page 47 and concludes on page 52. Oh, says shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Oh, says shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'himeru amen. Ve'himeru amen. We continue on page 53 where we rise for Vayachulu. Vayachulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzevam. Vayachal Elohim bayom hashvi'i melachto asher asa. Vayishbot bayom hashvi'i mikol melachto asher asa. Vayavarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i vayakadesh oto. Kivo shavat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim la'asot. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanara El Elyon Konei Shamayim va'aretz. You may be seated. Magen Avot bidvaro mechaye metim b'mamaro. Ha'el hakadosh she'ein kamohu hameniach le'amo b'yom Shabbat kodsho. Kivam ratza lahaniach lahem. Kivam ratza lahaniach lahem. Lefanav na'avod b'irav v'fachad v'nodeh lishmo b'chol yom tamid me'ein habrachot. El hahodaot Adon hashalom mekadesh hashabbat umvarech shvi'i umeniach b'kedusha le'amedu shnei ahoneg zecher lema'aseh v'reishit. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ritzei v'imnuchatenu Kachenu b'mitzvotecha v'ten chelkenu b'toratecha sahabenu mituvecha v'samchenu b'shuatecha v'taher libenu li'ovdecha be'emet v'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava uvratzon Shabbat kodshecha v'yanuchu v'Yisrael mekadeshei shemecha baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Yikadav yikadash shemei rabbah b'yomah divra kirtei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayachon v'yamechon v'chayit kol beit Yisrael b'agal v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam olam me'ol maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalash me'dekudsha brichu le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tishprata v'nechamata tamiran b'yomah v'imru amen. Titkabat tzalot hon uvavchon t'chol Yisrael kadam avon divishmai v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleni v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. O says shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleni v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yishvei tevel v'imru amen. We turn to page 55 for the Kiddush. Do I have any under bar mitzvah children coming up? Come on up. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam vorei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta V'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha b'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu baruch ata Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. We remain standing and turn the page for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latei gedula liotzer breshit shalo asan k'goyei haratzot v'lo samanu k'mishpachot adama shalo sam chalkeinu kahem v'go raleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noteh Shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, u'moshev yikaro b'shamayim mima'al, u'shchinatu zo, b'gov hei meromim. Hu Eloheinu ein od, emet malkeinu efezulato, kakatuv b'torato, v'yadata hayom v'hashevota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim imal, v'al haaretz mitachat, ein od. כי המלכות שלך היא, ולמי תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You may be seated. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 58, all those in mourning and those observing Yortzeit this week. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. B'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agalav u'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. And a few announcements. Services, of course, tomorrow at 9:30. We'll be celebrating George Schrager coming to Torah as a bar mitzvah. We have been contacted, Synod's been contacted from several of our congregants who are having difficulty getting to services for all kinds of reasons, and we're looking for folks that are willing to drive other people to shul. It is not a huge commitment. You can sign up to drive as often or as infrequently as you would like. The plan is to have a sign-up genius, and so that you would sign up when to drive and who to drive, I suppose. So on the announcement sheet, it asks that you reach out to Sandy Bouchard, who is head of our Chesed committee, or you can go on the synagogue website. I'm sure there's information about that as well, and she will then try to put something together for these folks. This Sunday morning, starting at 9 a.m., we have a blood drive. Steve, are you still in charge of that? Excellent. Well, Steve Schneider has wonderfully championed this for our community at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. It'll be in the social hall. We do need people to donate blood. So can they sign up on the website or?
There's cell phones on the website. You can walk in, we have openings between 11 and
Okay, so if you're looking to walk in, there are openings between 11 and 1. And certainly making an appointment is helpful, and I'm sure that went in the weekly email announcements as well on Wednesday. Then next, of course, we have services Sunday morning and Wednesday evening, but next Sunday, November 13th, is the first of our adult ed brunches for the year, and we are back to holding them in person. Thanks to the tireless efforts of Sean Sager and Deborah Goldstein, the brunches did not go away during the pandemic and were held online, but we're now able to bring them back in person. But we are offering a Zoom option as well for those of you that would like, for whatever reasons, not to be here, whether it's COVID-related or otherwise, that you can Zoom in and hear the talk. It's our first time doing it this way, so be a little patient, but I think it's going to work out just fine. The program will be held in the social hall, and the featured speaker is Karen Daniels. Karen is relatively new to Raleigh. She moved here from Nashville. But she's not new to our community, because those of us in the religious school community that go to the New Cage conferences know Karen, as she is one of the musicians that often performs at New Cage. She is not a musician sort of by profession. She was like a CPA or something, but always loved Jewish music and always had a hand in Jewish education. And here she's teaching in our religious school, providing music in our preschool, and also music for our religious school students. And her talk will be an interesting one. I've heard it because she presented it this past summer at the New Cage Conference. She has a picture of a family member that she grew up seeing and always wondered about. And she did her genealogical research and family lore, and actually created a book that she self-published called The Woman Who Never Smiled. And it's a fascinating tale of Jewish life in Ukraine from about 100 years ago or so. And I saw Karen deliver this talk this summer. She did it. It was very both entertaining and informative. She weaves some music throughout, and she will have her book and CDs available for purchase for those that are interested. But I do encourage you to consider attending. If you do need to register, or we would like you to register, because we're trying to figure out how many people are coming and how much food we need to prepare. If you're going to come in on Zoom, still click wherever it says to register. You don't actually make a reservation, but the Zoom link is on the registration page. So you can go to the Beth Meyer Synagogue calendar, go to November 13th, click on the event. It'll bring you to that page, and you'll see the Zoom link if you need that, or where you register. And there's no fee for the brunch. At least I don't think there's a fee. No fee for the brunch. And it'll be delicious food. So I encourage you to come and join us if you're able to. And that's it for the announcements that I know of. Of course, Election Day is Tuesday, so if you haven't already voted, please make sure to get to your poll and vote. If you need, I don't know, if you need guidance as to who to vote for, don't forget the school board, don't forget the small offices. Contact some folks, neighbors, people that you like and trust, and ask where they look for recommendations, and educate yourself that way. Am I missing anything, folks? Oh, I'll mention just one thing, and maybe I'm late to the party, but I found the other day a new Israeli TV series on Amazon Prime that I'd never heard of before, called Commandment or Commandments. Are you familiar with it? It's really good. I'm only into the 3rd episode, but it is subtitled, so you got to stay awake while you watch it. You can't doze off. But it's about a religious unit in the army, and it's fiction, and you see the good and the bad of some of the things of Israeli society. So I'm really finding it very compelling. So it's called, again, Commandment, and I'm pretty positive it's Amazon Prime. Okay, let's finish up our service on page 60 with Hachama Meirosh, my favorite Shabbat song. So page 60. Hachama Meirosh ha'ilanot nistalka ba'uvenetze likrat Shabbat hamalka hine hi yoredet hakadosha habrucha ve'ima malachim tzva shalom u'menucha boi boi hamalka boi boi hakala Shalom aleichem malachei hashalom Kibalnu pnei Shabbat birnana utefila Habaita nashuva b'lev ma'ale kihila. Shamaru chashulchan hanerot ya'iru. Kol pinot habayit yizrachu yazhiru. Shabbat shalom umevorach. Shabbat shalom umevorach. Boachem l'shalom malachei ha-shalom. Shabbat shalom, everyone. I hope you'll join us in the social hall for a brief Oneg Shabbat.